Hi, everybody. This is Allorah. I am a new host here on Witches of the Moon. I want to thank my lovely, lovely friend Bravehawk for inviting me into this project, and Natalie as well for approving of me being one of the hosts for Witches of the Moon. I believe I will be here every Saturday, but other than that, you can find me on Facebook and on my own channel, and also on a live stream that airs every 2 weeks called Spread This Witches. I will put all the links below. But for this week, this is week 3, and we're talking about grand ritual versus daily petitions. So, grand rituals. These are things that I personally do on holidays which are important to me. I know witches who honor every holiday in the same manner. I am not one of those people. There are certain holidays that mean more to me just because they resonate louder with me than other holidays. For instance, Mabon is a big one for me simply because I was born on that day. So it's extra special to me because not only is it the witch's Thanksgiving, but it's also my birthday. So of course I'm going to celebrate that in extravagant style every year. Samhain is another one that's big for me, as is Beltane. Yule's kind of in there, but Emolk, Lugnasad, Midsummer. Even though I work with the Fae, Midsummer's not really a big, huge one for me. But in general, if I had to pick like my top 3 holidays that get the grandest rituals, it would be Mabon, Samhain, and Beltane. For different reasons, of course. I have always been a planner, and I've always been very much into writing and planning things out. And I am also a perfectionist, so when I do big rituals, they are very thought out, very planned. This is something I'm actually working through currently because I have this draw to not be so planned in my practice. But historically in my practice, this is the way things have gone. They usually will last, excuse me, sorry. They usually will last anywhere from an hour to 3 hours, depending on what all I include. Typically with a grand ritual, I start with a ritual bath, which is good to do anyways, just even in daily petitioning. Not daily, but I'd say at least for me, every 2 weeks, I like to take a ritual bath. I just feel better. But yeah, if I include a ritual bath to start with, and then a meal, and then whatever other events I have planned, usually if it's a big grand ritual and it's a whole day's worth of activities, it could even take the whole day. It just depends. As for like the ritual part itself, I'd say 1 to 3 hours, depending on where I start. What do I do in grand ritual? You can celebrate it any way you like, whether it's a Sabbath or an Esbit. And speaking of which, Esbits, I celebrate when I feel them. I don't always celebrate every single cycle. Some months I celebrate all of the Esbits. Some months I don't celebrate any. Sometimes I only celebrate 1 or 2. Those I just kind of wing it. But if it's a Sabbath that I'm doing a grand ritual for, you can celebrate it any way you want. I'm just telling you how I practice. And I can talk about the structure of my grand rituals without undoing the magic that comes with them. So I like to start with grounding, centering, protecting, casting my circle, calling the quarters. I am very much into the elementals, and so I find that I can't do ritual without calling them into my sacred space. So I always call the quarters. And then I call in deity. For me, typically that is Odin and Kali, which I just did a video about her, but typically those two would be my go-to deities right now because they've been around for quite some time. However, I will work with other deity energies if I have gained permission from my matron and patron that it is okay that I work with them. And so, yeah. And I just want to like go back to that for just a second. So when I say gain permission, like I will feel another deity calling to me, wanting me to work with them for whatever purpose it may be. Usually it's on behalf of somebody else. However, sometimes it's just like a small thing that I'm in need of and they have a better energy for that thing. But I always want to gain permission from the deities who work with me exclusively, just because I don't want to piss anybody off. That is bad juju and can get you in some serious trouble. So yeah, so I make sure I gain their permission if I'm going to work with another deity. And then, it just depends. Sometimes I'll do spell work. Most of the time I don't. And if I do, and sometimes when I do spell work, it's less involved than people like to think, because there are things that I'll do that are symbolic, or like sigils, or writing something down and burning it, or it's not as fantastical as Hollywood, or people who are first starting to learn. Even I did that. It's not as fantastical as we imagine it to be. What makes it fantastical is us, and us working the power and the magic that we have. So that covers like my grand ritual practices. I don't wear any particular jewelry when I do a grand ritual. I just don't. I don't know why. I don't have a specific set of clothing, but I typically find that I like to wear black or purple if I'm doing grand ritual. And also, it also depends on the time of year and so forth and so on. Like, I'm trying to give an example. Like at Beltane, I'd probably wear brighter colors, or maybe even white. For me, it's all feeling and how I feel at the time when something comes around, what kind of energy I'm trying to work with, what deities I'm going to be calling on to come into my sacred space. And so, yeah, I'm an emotional empath. And so a lot of things are energetic with me. Now, as far as daily petitioning goes, not quite sure what that means for everyone. I kind of think that daily petitioning is, for me, it's my thoughts. It's kind of subconscious unless I'm conscious of my subconscious. I know that sounds convoluted, but it's things that I think about that I want in my life, that at the time that I think them, I'm not consciously aware of my thoughts until later, when something happens and comes into my life or goes out of my life, and I'm like, oh, holy shit, like I thought about that the other day. I don't really, I do journal, and I do tarot journaling, but I don't specifically sit down and write out things that I want or anything like that. I will talk to deity throughout the day, whoever I'm working with. For instance, this is just a small example. The other night, I really was wishing and wanting a sign from Odin. And so I said out loud, I need a sign. I need to know that you are around. And I did not get a sign that night, but the next morning when I woke up, I was driving home and two ravens swooped down to my car, which was all the sign that I needed because I'm very well versed in what that means in regards to Odin. So yeah, I think you can do daily petitioning in multiple ways. Like I said, I typically like to talk to my deity figures, and I think a lot of it's just my unconscious, conscious thinking. And if I have a specific request, I can do a smaller daily petitioning, but that's rare for me. And another way, and another thing I think is part of daily petitioning, which this is probably a whole nother topic, but when you have an altar to deity or an altar to ancestor or both, or altars for prosperity or whatever it is you're wanting to work with, I think that's a form of daily petitioning. Just having that space, holding that space, and honoring those energies within your own life, and waking up every morning and doing something small on your altar, like lighting an incense or lighting a candle or framing a picture to put on there, or even when you rearrange things because you have a different intuitive feeling of how they should look or how they should feel, or so forth and so on. So those are my thoughts on grand ritual versus daily petitioning. I am so glad you could join me. I have placed all of the links to my personal stuff below. And thank you again to Bravehawk and Natalie for inviting me. I will see you guys next week.